Hello, good afternoon. Hello, am I audible? Hello, Dr. Sunita, I can see you. I'll also turn my video on just to make sure it's fine.
Okay, sir. Hello, sir.
Visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, audio is clear? Is my audio clear? Okay.
Yes, sir, it's clear, sir. It's clear.
Fine. And then I'll keep my video off till the actual meeting starts.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, sir.
College వాళ్ళు KGR college. ఫ్రీనే.
సార్ వచ్చారు సార్. గుడ్ ఆఫ్టర్నూన్ సార్. సార్ వచ్చారు సార్. సురేష్ సార్ కూడా ఉన్నారు సార్.
స్టార్ట్ చేయమంటారా?
పార్టిసిపెంట్స్ ఇంకా
ఇక్కడ ఎవరు గడికేశ్వర్ నుంచి
22 మెంబర్స్.
మేనేజ్మెంట్ వాళ్ళు
చేద్దామా సార్?
స్టార్ట్ చేయాలా మేడం?
చేయండి సార్. సార్ కూడా ఉన్నారు.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the voice of Dr. Ramna Rao, Director, KGR Institute of Technology and Management. The KGR Institute of Technology and Management, initiated by Dr. K. Govind Reddy in the year 2008 with an MBA section. Later on, we have included M Pharmacy, B Pharmacy. Altogether, we have a strength of 800 students right now. Today, we are initiating webinar, national level webinar. This is because every higher education institution is primarily suggested or expected to perform 3 functions: teaching, research, and extension. As part of our endeavor, we are conducting a national level webinar on the topic impact of COVID-19 on Indian startups. Our mission is to reach large number of audience through this webinar. Before going to delve into this, so many other things, the opening remarks are like this. Accessibility to 4G technology. Most Indian population has accessed this 4G technology, and this has led to most of the entrepreneurs focused on building digital services and product development by identifying these trends. And supported by this 4G technology and other things, there is a tremendous increase in the middle class demography as well as the disposable incomes. These are not limited to things like Hotstar or Paytm, but we have extended it to online and offline services like Ola, Big Basket, kind of things came into existence. This is mainly because of the revolution in the technology. And coming to the startup, the India is emerging as the 3rd largest ecosystem, startup ecosystem, only after USA and China. And according to the Department of Industry and International Trade, we have around 74,600 units spread over 649 districts. And even the foreign investment also increased from 550 billion to 14.5, 550 million to 14.5 billion. And this is a phenomenal growth. And this is mainly, and not only that, we have, I think we have crossed the 100 mark unicorn numbers. Each unicorn number means each that has more than $1 billion investment. And this is all because of the government initiatives and digital payments and availability of the skills and talents in India. And as far as the DIIT, now recently Telangana is the top performer in the country, along with other 3 states. This is all a welcome scenario, and also the amount of time spent by the ministries and also the government in the development of. Recently, Telangana state has even started a T-Hub facility center. And this is all the things which show that there is a tremendous growth as far as the startups are concerned. And the reasons are very many. India is a plethora of different cultures, different languages, and also the geographic conditions. But unfortunately, since the last 2 years, we all globally, we have seen the pandemic COVID-19. Across the various other business sectors sensed the repercussions of COVID-19. But most vulnerable is in the case of startups. This is because the startups are dependent on private funding. The unhinged inflation, uncertain future, this is all led to a bear trend in the public exchanges. This has bled into the private funding agencies also. Angel or venture sector funding agencies also tightened their purses. These things resulted in sharp, steep fall in the private foreign investments. Now, actually it is 1.53 billion that has plunged to $0.30 billion only. But as the Piyush Goyal, the central minister, said, each state should help the other state with their success stories, and inter-district competition should also be encouraged. There is the need for diversification of the investment. And startups, really they are facing problems. Now today we have 2 doyens in the field, like Suresh Garu and Prarthana Kumar, professor. These 2 are the authority on the subject. We, of course, we are touching only thumbnail sketch here, and they are going to explain in detail what the situation in the pandemic period and how to overcome the situations. And Sir Suresh Garu and Prarthana Kumar Garu, we are all waiting for your expert opinion, your observations, how to come out of how to face the situations and all that. I congratulate Professor Vijayalakshmi Garu for taking up this topic. This is really a wonderful topic. All the people, including our students, are waiting for the valuable suggestions from these 2. And their observations are welcome. They're proficient, they're efficient, they're authority on the subject, and we are all waiting, sir. With this, I would like to hand over this program to convener Professor Vijayalakshmi Garu. Vijayalakshmi Garu, please.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Myself, Professor S. Vijayalakshmi, Principal, KGR Institute of Technology and Management, Rampalli, Hyderabad. Respected Chief Guest, Sri Suresh Adina Garu, Vice President, Startups, Innovation T-Hub, and our today's invited speaker, Dr. Prarthana Kumar Garu, Professor and Coordinator of Entrepreneurship Cell, Institute of Public Enterprise, Hyderabad. Honorable Chairman, Dr. K. Govind Reddy Garu, respected Director, Professor P.V. Ramnarao Garu, my dear colleagues, participants from the different parts of the country, and my dear loving students. A very good afternoon to all, and I take this as my privilege to welcome you all on behalf of KGR Institute of Technology and Management to this national webinar on impact of COVID-19 pandemic on Indian startups today. We are very much ecstatic to have Sir and Madam as our guest speakers for today's program. And we believe that it is an excellent opportunity to learn from them and be inspired to this beyond. As the convener of this program, I take it as my privilege to explain the need for selecting this topic for the webinar. Firstly, I was inspired a lot by going through the various articles in the newspapers on the impact of this pandemic 19 on Indian startups and the initiatives of the central and state governments for their helping hand to these startups. It is high time to discuss the real impact of the pandemic on the startups and the invited guests to offer their suggestions for the betterment of these firms in India in this hard time. Sir, you are welcome, sir. And now I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Sunita Reddy Garu, to introduce our chief guest of this program. Ma'am, please start.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I, Dr. K. Sunita, working as an associate professor in KGR Institute of Technology and Management. I am very much privileged to introduce an eminent speaker, Mr. Suresh Adina, is Vice President Startup Innovation Competency at T-Hub. He has over 30 years of work experience, mostly from IT background, and worked in India and USA. He has been a startup founder 3 times and has worked with several startups as an advisor and mentor. From an educational perspective, he has BTech from IIT Kharagpur and dual masters from MIT and Northeastern University in US. He has worked across sectors, technologies, and levels. He likes working with students and is passionate about building startups. He has been with T-Hub for a little over 2 years and handles various development programs for startups and founders. Now the session would be taken over by Mr. Suresh Adina, sir. Sir, please welcome, sir. Sir.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. First thing I want to make sure is that I want to disclaim that I'm not an expert on this topic, but having seen and worked with startups for the past 2 years, I'll share my thoughts and experiences. Also, I want to deviate a little bit from the agenda in the sense that I will speak on the topic, but I've been given 35 minutes to speak. I'm not a teacher or a lecturer, so I'm not used to speaking that long. So what I will do is that I'll share my thoughts for the first maybe about 20-25 minutes and spend the last minute, 10-15 minutes in interacting. I understand both faculties of the colleges and also students of the colleges are on the call. So I'll be happy to discuss with them rather than bore you with too much gyan and knowledge from my side. I'll share some of my thoughts and experiences. Beyond that, let's have a conversation. Okay, so let me get started. So let me set the context for this, right? So we are talking about impact of COVID-19 pandemic on Indian startups. That's a very, very large subject because this COVID-19 is something that's a once in a lifetime experience for all of us, right? I'm 50 plus, and this is something I never envisaged that we will actually go through a situation like this. So we don't know what to do, frankly speaking. But let me start with a smaller context, right? If we look back just 1 week ago, right, in Hyderabad, around Hyderabad, the weather was very pleasant. It used to rain once in a while, and it was fine. We enjoyed the rains and then some warm weather. But over the last 5 days, it's been raining so heavily that even educational institutions have been closed by the government. Did we anticipate this a week ago? Probably not, right? And what is the impact of this rain on different stakeholders in that? Look, we have faculty on the call, we have students on the call. Those two are critical because of educational institutions. But the same impact is also felt by the parents of the students, the children and families of the faculty, because it's not just faculty going to college and coming back. It has an impact all around their families and their immediate circles. So this impact that you would have all gone through, right, at some level, different levels for different people, experiences wise, right? It's like 100 times or 1,000 times multiplied is the impact of the COVID on not just startups, but we'll also see like what else is there in terms of startups ecosystem, right? Who else is impacted by it, right? So to also set the further context, I have an interesting journey with T-Hub, which is that I joined T-Hub on the very first day, or actually I was supposed to join on Monday, the 24th of March, 2020. And then the Janta lockdown happened on 23rd, and 24th onwards, government declared lockdown. So for the first 2.5 months, till about mid to late June, I had not even met any of my colleagues. I joined virtually and I joined the calls. I got connected to people online through Zoom calls and Google Meet calls like this, and had a lot of interactions, right? So that was an interesting way to start. I had never experienced that because whenever I start, I go to office, do all the paperwork, get introduced to people, spend 2-3 days getting to know them and start the work. Here, the difference was that on day one, I was on the job. I was on a call with startup, talking to them what is going through their mind and what do they want, what kind of support we can provide them. That was a drastic change because we went from a purely physical environment to a completely online interactions where we just saw faces of each other. But that's very different. Like, for example, today's session would have been extremely ideal if we could all be meeting in one physical location and looking at each other while I talk and you listen. I can also see your responses. Obviously, the situation does not permit, so we are doing this the second best option, right? But it is something that has become inevitable in the past 2 years, both in terms of our work as well our personal life. Personal lives got drastically impacted because, I was at home basically all day long, and my wife, my daughter have to deal with that, right? Earlier, I would just leave for office at 9 o'clock, and then I'd be back only at 7 o'clock. My wife did not have to deal with it. She packed lunch for me, and that's it. Evening 7 o'clock, I came back. She made dinner, and that was the day. But now she has to deal with it all through the day. And that gives you a pretty understanding of how it impacted individual lives. Now, startup life becomes much more tenfold complicated when it comes to individual lives. If we think that we went through challenges in our work environment, startup life is a lot more complicated. So before we talk about the impact itself, I'll give you certain dimensions to the startups. So when we think of startups and the impact of anything, right, market changes, COVID, climate changes, etc., we generally tend to look at a one-dimensional picture saying that all startups are impacted or no startup is impacted. Excuse me. But that's not the reality, right? So startups have multiple dimensions. First and foremost is the people who initiate the startup, or we generally call them founders, and then they become CXOs, CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, etc. Those people determine a lot in terms of what is the impact. Just like we determine what is impact on our personal lives, founders more or less decide the journey of the startup. And we find that people who are mature enough, who are able to think through this and then get past the problems that are in front of them, deal with the impact a lot more better. Not that they're not impacted, but they can able to find ways to cope with the impact, right? Just like somebody who has seen rainy seasons 20 years in life, or who has been in Bombay. I don't know how many of you are from Bombay. Bombay rains are insistent, right? My sister stays there. And once it starts raining, it will continue for a few days. People in Bombay know how to deal with it. If somebody from Hyderabad goes to Bombay, like I did one season in rain, I do not know how to cope with it, right? I will say, oh, this rain is, too much. I can't do anything. I have to sit, cancel my plans, all these things. But if somebody living in Bombay, that's normal. They continue with their life. They're ready with rain jackets, coats, caps, umbrellas, whatever it takes, they're ready to go. Once in a while, local train can stop, but that is an unusual situation. So similar to that, founders and their experience and the mindset they come with the startup. If they're coming in the mindset that I want to make money as quickly as possible, they're going to miserably fail. In situation like COVID, people who are focused on just business development failed miserably because they had no alternate plans. They knew how to build a product and then sell it. But what if that product itself was not meaningful in the market anymore as they designed it? Right? So the second point is going to be in terms of the product itself. But before we go into the product, it's equally important what domain they are in, right? What industry or sector or domain that we call it, right? For a few examples of domains that got very badly hit. First and foremost is hospitality industry, which is like hotels, local travel, or intercity travel, etc. Because for 2.5 months, complete lockdown, there is nothing they can do. So even now, I think hospitality industry is something that has not fully recovered, right? Events and other things, conferences still don't happen that way. I'm sure all of us went through this experience that family weddings were not the same. Earlier, family weddings mean that you would attend every wedding anywhere in India. Now, for a long time, it meant that there were only 50 people were invited, 100 people are invited to the wedding. So the people even having to invite or also get invited were being very, very selective, right? Second industry is obviously food. Food, people were not buying outside. There was a lot of fear for some time. People we got used to cooking at home. So outside food got hit badly. Third one I already mentioned is about the travel industry. Starting from airlines to local transport to trains to buses, and probably the biggest hit, because they depend on daily wages, are local transport people like autos and auto rickshaws and cab drivers, etc., who basically need to earn their living on a daily basis. And the last one, which probably a lot of us don't seem to be impacted by, but we also may not have noticed, is the construction and services industries. These people, including farming, right, they all earn their living on a daily basis. So startups who are dealing with them, right, there are now startups who provide you services to come to your house and clean, to provide labor to come to your house, to provide daily wages like nursing or cleaning services at home. These startups had zero business because, well, that was just not happening. Right, so these startups who were in this industry, they had got badly impacted. But there was also a scope for innovation in this space. For one example, I noticed, wonderful example that I saw was that because weddings were getting hit, people were not being invited or invited in very limited numbers. And people felt bad. Like, so if I have a family wedding or a birthday party, I would invite a lot of people that I really want them at the wedding. Now, because of the COVID constraints, I would not be able to invite them, but I still want to engage them in some way in the wedding, right? So two major innovations that happened was, one is live streaming of weddings, which was happening once in a while earlier, but now it has become so common. Everybody has got used to live streaming of weddings and any major events. There's also an advantage. Earlier, I don't know how many of us had this experience. If you go to a wedding, the stage would be surrounded by photographers, videographers, etc., where you could not. Sorry, is my voice low? I hope I'm clear. If it's not clear, just message me. So the videographers, the backside is what we would normally see, because we would not be able to see the bride and groom and their families on the stage. But thanks to video streaming, the streaming was done in such an advantage point that I've actually attended 3 to 4 weddings online, and I could actually follow the entire event for almost 1 to 2 hours without losing my attention or getting distracted by somebody else. Second major innovation I saw in this space, just as an example, is that somebody actually came up with the idea that there is catering services, there are delivery restaurants delivering, etc. Why don't they make a wedding-based catering service? Like if you go to a wedding, they will serve you a nice meal, right? You sit down, hopefully sometimes sit down, sometimes buffet meals. In either way, they are very lavish. In India, we put a lot of effort into the food that we serve to the guests. So somebody took that concept and said, hey, if you're having a wedding and you have people that you're not able to invite, give us a list of those people and their addresses. At the time of the wedding lunch or dinner, we will deliver them packaged food. Not like the typical restaurants in silver foils, etc. They said we will do it like a Vistaraku Bhojanam, right? So they actually had either banana leaves or the Vistaraku that we all know in the South India, at least we use it quite regularly. And they also delivered food in a basket and packaged in banana leaves. So it felt like actually you were at a wedding and sharing it along with the wedding party. To me, that's a great innovation. That's an opportunity. There is some set of founders who thought of this idea and say, hey, if something is not possible, let me think of an alternative. Right? I can go on. There are lots of examples, but this is just to give you an idea of what is the innovation possible in terms of the situations like this. So this is an impact. Earlier to that, I'm pretty sure nobody has thought of this. Nobody has done this. Right? Of course, the product also matters. What you're trying to build, whether it's relevant to the market, whether you're able to adapt with quickly. Next one is the stage of the startup, right? So if you're just beginning, the impact is very, very different because there was uncertainty in terms of what will happen. But even in April and May of 2020, people started planning like the new normal. Now the people stopped using it. But in April to June of 2020, this was a very common buzzword. What will be the new normal like? People started making predictions, bets on what it will be like, what are the changes, and started adapting to that. Not that everybody was successful, but if they started building something new at that stage, 6 months down the line when their product is ready, some of them proved to be very successful. Some of them who already built the product and just were waiting to get in the market, they got hit very badly because their product was ready and nobody was willing to pay for them. They had lots of team members who were already deployed. They had to pay their salaries, but there was no revenue coming in. Those are the startups that got really badly hit, right? And then, of course, there are startups who are already well established in the business. They were already able to figure out because they already had customers and they worked with the customers to say, hey, we are okay to wait another 2 months for your payments, but please don't cancel the contract. These kind of things. And customers were also willing to work with the startups because they knew the startups. There is not a new association they're starting with. They knew the startup, they knew the hardships that they were going through. Corporates also had financial troubles. Corporates also had to lay off people. And corporates also went through, situations where their product needs changed. But I think a lot of them actually were having conversations with the startups, working with them, and then ensuring that they were hit, but they were not terribly badly hit that it is beyond recovery. Next one is very critical, which is how were they funded? Right? Startups who were already funded were actually quite badly hit because they were burning a lot of money. Right? Once you get funding, you feel like, okay, I can spend more money now. And they already had like 50 people, 100 people team. And suddenly they could not afford those. And suddenly they started realizing that cash burn was very, very high. And they had to take drastic measures. So we started working with those startups and saying, you can work with alternate solutions with your employees. Instead of saying that I'm going to fire 50 people or 100 people, tell them that you are continuing to be on our payrolls, but you'll be kind of on leave for 1 or 2 months. Some of them work with 50% salaries. Some of them took pay cuts for a temporary time, 2-3 months. So all these solutions were possible. That's something we could discuss with the startups and then work with them and then make them survive. So sustainable is the main thing. Last part is in terms of how your business model is. So when you have a business model like, I think all of us know B2B, B2C, SaaS models, etc. So this decided how you survive. If you had a long-term contract, because this was considered as an unnatural situation and customers had the opportunity to cancel the contracts. If you had a flexible contract where you could say, okay, pay per use. So instead of canceling the contract, instead of 100 users, maybe they end up with now 50 users. So the company is also not burning too much cash, nor the startup is completely losing the business. So this was the impact on the startups that were well established and had very flexible business models. Last point is that some of the startups actually went through a very interesting phenomena called pivoting. I don't know how many of you are aware of this term, but basically pivoting means that you're able to change what you're doing today quickly and come up with a new idea, a new model so that you can actually cater to the changing needs in the market. A lot of startups, right? I think this is where entities like T-Hub helped a lot because we are not involved directly in the business. We could think of alternate ways, alternate things because we would observe the world, right? I was fortunate to be also working directly with the state government of Telangana, working with their principal secretaries in terms of what the government needs, and then correspondingly guide the startups in terms of building or catering to the needs of the society at large and government in specific. Right. So, and some of them actually ended up building COVID-specific solutions, obviously, which helped a lot in making sure that they survive. So, some of the sectors that actually thrived in these days is one is education, because education went completely online. So all kinds of education solutions from streaming, classroom management, testing online, these kind of lot of solutions became popular, and they actually did very well. Second one is mini e-commerce. The Amazons and Flipkarts and Snapdeal already existed; they were doing well. But local e-commerce, like even if you wanted to get something from your neighboring store, a lot of people were hesitant in the beginning days, even with a mask, to go out in public, whether it was only open for 2 hours and like 200 people would go to the store. So they would just say, I will order online and get it delivered to my home. Healthcare, obviously, huge impact. Now, complete telemedicine became extremely popular. And I think the Telangana government set up the 104 helpline. It was completely managed online with self. My family also got affected by COVID. I called the GHMC helpline, and then immediately within a few hours they delivered the solution, and that made a big difference because that makes us feel a lot more comfortable than trying to run around and see where to find solutions. And of course, because all offices also went online, a lot of solutions which basically encouraged collaborative workplaces became huge. And most surprising thing you might be not aware of is that companies that were doing business in furniture and computer hardware had a huge upswing because every company said that, okay, you're working from home, we will provide you not the laptop, already people had laptops, we'll provide you internet connection, we'll provide you a comfortable chair and desk and work from home. A lot of companies did that, and that really impacted the furniture business. One other thing that you may not have noticed is the drone industry really blossomed. From healthcare, now people are talking about organ transport through drones, medicine delivery in the last mile through drones. Strange case I also heard is people were talking about delivery of liquor through drones. I know that's a major requirement in the society today, but that is where all the different kinds of applications came. And of course, we all know about digital payments. 2.5 years back, if somebody told me that you can go buy coffee or a samosa at a bandi and make digital payment, I would not believe it. In fact, there was one session in the parliament where an ex-finance minister made fun of the government policy and said, who will pay for 10 rupees for a samosa through digital transactions? Today we know it's a reality. You can actually go have 2 cups of coffee, pay 10 rupees through Paytm or UPI or any other mechanism, and come back home. Right. So these are some of the impacts. It's 5:30, so I have another 10 minutes. So now, what is required for the startups to survive in this kind of uncertainty? First thing is, which I discussed previously, is adaptable. Both the founders, the business model, the product, all three have to be adaptable. Second one we found very, very important is that can you build solutions collaboratively? One startup cannot build an end-to-end solution for any sector, but multiple startups will be working in the same similar space. Can they collaborate and create connecting points for each other to provide end-to-end solutions for their customers or as per need? This brings peer-to-peer networks, startups actually working with each other, even if the solutions are different. We had a classic example of 4 waste management startups working in wet waste, dry waste, plastic, and then e-waste. We formed a consortium of that, and they went and worked with districts and said we can deal with end-to-end waste management. Earlier, they were all in the same building. They did not know each other. This epidemic forced them to get to know each other and forced them to work with each other. Right? Most critical is that how do you manage your risks? This, unfortunately, in the startup world is very rarely discussed, but is very, very important that how do you plan and mitigate your risks? Of course, you have to make sure that your startup is sustainable model in the sense that you're not fully reliant only on investments coming through. And if no investor comes forward, you have to close shop and go home. So you have to build sustainable solutions. I look at sustainability from three angles. One is that your business model should be sustainable, that you can earn decent money and also hopefully get some investment. Second one is that your product should be sustainable. It's not a product that you build today, sell tomorrow, and close shop day after tomorrow. Right? It should be sustainable over the next 3, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Only then product customers will buy it because they don't want to buy use and throw products. Right? Finally, your product has to be environmental friendly. It has to make sure that it does not lead to environmental degradation. Right? Last point I want to close with is that lot of clamor is there to say that can I build a startup idea with international market access? Recently, we had a conversation with 2 sets of investment companies, and both of them came out with the same point, saying that don't look outside India. India is a country of 1.3 billion people, multiple geographies, multiple languages, multiple cultural, multiple food, multiple clothing, multiple everything, right? Even in Hyderabad, we see so much variety. In that context, India or even the state that you're operating in is a huge opportunity, right? If you are able to build solutions which are actually locally acceptable, then look at scaling across the states, across the international borders. That becomes more meaningful. If you really want to survive, that's the only way to go, right? Thank you for the opportunity. I concluded my remarks here. I believe I have another 5-10 minutes, Madam, Vijayalakshmi Madam. Based on the time available, I can take a few questions from other faculty or students.
Yes, sir. 5 more minutes, sir. 5 more
Okay.
minutes.
So, guys, so I'm open to questions. Please don't type the questions. Unmute yourself, ask, and then mute yourself again. Somebody had raised a hand earlier. I don't know whether it was intentional.
No one, sir?
Okay, there are no questions. I thank you and I appreciate you listening to me patiently. I hope there was some useful information.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you, sir. Suresh, sir, very much thanks, sir. Please accept our sincere appreciations for the outstanding presentation you made here. It was very interesting to hear, sir, about your experience in Telangana T-Hub in startups. And the presentation, which is very much, the presentation which you had given is very much valuable, sir. which had enlightened us about T-Hub and also the contemporary issues and problems which the startups are facing now, sir. It is very much useful for the general public and the beginners, whoever wants to start their career in starting the startup business, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Now I would like my colleague, Dr. K. Rajshekar Reddy, Associate Professor of KGR Institute of Technology and Management, to invite our next guest speaker.
Good afternoon, all. I, Dr. K. Rajshekar Reddy, Associate Professor, KGR Institute of Technology and Management. It's my privilege to introduce main speaker, Dr. Prarthana Kumari, is a program coordinator of the PGDM marketing program and the executive PGDM program, works as a professor in the area of marketing. She is a business management graduate specializing in tourism and hospitality management and holds an MBA specialization in marketing and HR. She earned a PhD as point work of multisensory marketing from a University of Hyderabad. She has completed a postdoctoral research from Indian Council of Social Science Research, New Delhi. She is a coordinator for the entrepreneurship cell at IPE and has been the coordinating and organizing IPE annual flagship event Startupedia for the last 8 years. She has developed a study material for Indira Gandhi National Open University in the area of marketing. She has presented and published widely nationally and internationally. She has been widely cited her work in the multidisciplinary marketing. Our area of interest are neuromarketing, women consumer behavior, branding, and advertisement. Madam, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words and thank you for this opportunity given. I should really thank Vijay Lakshmi Madam to come up and give me an opportunity to be a part of this. Just before I start, Madam, I would request you to please enable screen sharing. It says I cannot share. Enable.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. Sure, ma'am. Yeah. Madam, you can share, ma'am. You can share. The facility is given. Unmute yourself.
Madam, it says host disabled participant screening share.
I think the host has to make her a co-host.
I think so, something of that sort, because I'm not able to screen. I am still unable to.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. They are making you as the host, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
2 seconds, ma'am.
Madam, do
Madam.
you need help with that?
Co-host ఎవరున్నారు? Co-host.
No, there is somebody logged in as KGR Institute who is the only host. That person has to click on Pradhana's.
Srinivas and Mahesh sir.
Yeah. So that person has to click on Pradhana's ID and then.
Sir, actually, sir, it's over, sir.
Okay.
Madam, you can share, ma'am. It's not coming.
I'm sorry, madam, I'm not still able to do it at all. I'm really sorry. Do you mind texting me your email address, madam? I'll forward you my PPT. Probably that will help.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
I guess that should be.
Ma'am, now you can share, ma'am. You had come the co-host. And Pradhana, madam. Hello, madam.
I hope, madam, my screen is visible.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, it's visible, ma'am. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll probably put it in full screen so that we are able to see it better. Now, thank you, madam, for giving me this opportunity. I should thank your director also for inviting us here. I had a very powerful speaker right ahead of me, which is Suresh sir. And I know, with somebody who's a practitioner, an academician talking is generally something that is, it should complement otherwise. But yes, you have been a very good speaker otherwise, because I even had him personally coming in for Startupedia this year, and he was a great source of information and inspiration to our students. So just as it was mentioned earlier, that we will be, the course of action or the course of discussion today is all about Indian startups and how did the pandemic affect them, or how do you see it? I thought about it from a different perspective also, and then thought we'll discuss it this way. We will surely discuss as to how Indian startups were affected by the pandemic. Probably I'll share some statistics that were released by FICCI and FAPSI and the Indian Angel Network, just because, it helps us understand as to what were the statistics that they had brought in their research and surveys. We then move on to discussing probably as to how Indian startups are presently, how are they right now, and then go on to discuss something which is very close to my heart in terms of how have Indians, normal, commoners, used that lockdown period to come up with very innovative ideas. And these are some small startups that started off during the lockdown period. So 2020 is the time that they had, that they came out as such. And that's something that I'd probably taken for. So the presentation divided into 3 parts. To begin with, as I mentioned, some statistics that can really help us in. We can surely understand, I'm sure that you would be able to connect with me when I try to talk about the impact of the, the pandemic on the startups. We see that almost 70% of the businesses said that they have been affected by the pandemic. Some of them said that, their growth has been affected, but there are a good number of, that's 14% of the people, 14% of the business startups really said, pandemic has nowhere affected us. And this is a part of a FAPSI survey that was conducted in association with the Indian Angel Network. Following which, how many startups operations mattered? As in, like, how many of the startup operations made the pandemic influenced or affected their organization on a day-to-day basis? You see, almost 60% of them said, yes, we are facing somewhat disruptions. We had another who said, 28% who said that we are operating in full capacity, no problems whatsoever. But you had another 12%, which is again a big one, said that we have stopped operating, not operating at all. That immediately shows you as to how much of an impact that the pandemic has had on startups, because probably they couldn't get out of home, or they were not technologically based. So that's how any startup that was, as Suresh Garu rightly said, which was related to hospitality, which was related to tourism, which was related to anything going from one destination to the other, all of them were badly affected during the lockdown periods or the pandemic time especially. Now, how did these companies try to make sure that they are able to survive? How did they reduce their cost? So you see that 68% of the people as such mentioned, that startups mentioned, that they reduce their cost by reducing their operational cost. So they try to make sure that they are more efficient with their same resources possible. Reduction of operational cost is what they tried and for. 18% said that we've laid off people. And then laid off people, again, as most of us know, that a lot of people lost their job during the pandemic. So they came under that, especially from a startup perspective. And 14% said that no reduction of post-COVID-19, no reduction at all, as in we are continuing in a very comfortable situation without any major efforts for cost cutting or operational cutting in terms of reducing your fixed cost cutting there. We have another set, and this is something which is very important in terms of the deal status. There were so many companies who were lined up for investments within India, out of India, and a lot of investor pitches have been already made. Some statistics right in front of you, and it is just, it can give you a bird's eye view as to what might have had happened. You see, 33% of the investors put the decisions on hold because they weren't sure if the idea that they want to invest into, or the money that they will put into right now, would that really be taking them to a long way through? Not sure at all about that. Some investors gave no response for the pitches that were done, so they kept mum. Some who had maybe given commitments said we would want to wait for some time. We had 17% who signed the agreement but did not receive the fund. Committed, done, we will give you, and still they did not give any fund. I mean, that typically shows at that point in time, again, because market being volatile, business models being probably outdated because of the pandemic being there and everything moving online, one such challenge that happened. Similar way, we had 10% of the deals that were cancelled. That means investors said that we will give you, and then they went completely forthright saying that we will cancel the deal. We do not want to pursue this investment deal any further. And lastly, we had 8% who signed the agreement and received the funds. That ideally meant that those people those 8% of the startups who received the funds were probably those startups that as such had looked in for investments. Their model were right. They were technologically based, and they had a sustainable model which could go through the grind that the startup pandemic system will put them across. So we had these variety, which was the deal status in general. This would just give you a bird's eye view as to how you can really go about an understanding what impact that they had pre-lockdown, because these were commitments that were in the pipeline before the lockdown. And soon after the lockdown was in place, the commitment levels changed. Then you have startup workforces. As to how did you manage startup workforces, because startups are such such business entities which are very sensitive at that point in time. You are very sensitive. You do not want to invest too much of money. You want to save the money at that point in time, because especially with operation costs that you are trying to handle. So you mostly try to work out on things which are trying to make sure that your workforces are in continuation with things. So you see this, that you have no layoffs, but salary would be cut out. So some startups were good enough who said that we will not have any layoff as such, but we may have some small, cutoff that we will try to manage with the salary. Then you had some startups who said we had no impact whatsoever. We are continuing with full strength, full salary, full advantages that can be given to our employees. And then you had another few who said that we may get into a grim situation of the business if in case the lockdown continues for longer beyond May 2020. Now, ideally meaning, what I'm trying to draw home is that the impact of the pandemic has been seen on all across. I've shared with you some statistics which were related to the impact in general. Did the pandemic affect? We see, yes, it has affected. Did the pandemic influence your workforce or your workforce ability? It has impacted. It has also gone through that there have been companies that have almost reduced their price, their employees' salaries by almost 25 to 30%. We have good number of startups who have done that just so that they can be aloof, afloat into the water, still continuing with business. And we have also seen how deals were cancelled. Only 8% of the startups really received money. For the rest of them, they were all either cancelled or they were on hold. Now, this from wherever we were, and the pandemic almost coming to almost an end, I guess that's how we have mostly been behaving like. We see that all this time that we have had, we've seen the pandemic change our market structure. We have seen pandemic and the interests of investors changing from physical base to edu-tech or health tech or med tech or anything, or fintech. As anyway, any place where there is technology involved and there is not necessity of any physical ability. As long as that sort of a situation is in place, we see that there have been developments that we see. We have seen a huge development in e-commerce as a sector. We have seen huge development medical as an area and sector. We have seen huge development towards in terms of going ahead with a lot of information based thing, IT or ERP based products that have been growing. Now the present situation in India is typically like this, that we as a nation have ranked third in the ecosystem all over the world. First is the US and then China, following which the year of 2021 has been like a jackpot for India, especially from the unicorn perspective, that we have had almost 44 startups getting the unicorn status in 2021 and 14 already who have got through the status in 2022 so far. So ideally, Indian startups is right now, again, it's picking up. So you have almost 103 unicorns in the nation, and they are picking up, they are growing and in their own sustainable model, and funding is coming. So ideally meaning that the pandemic did make sure that people are in thought, people are not sure, investors would have given a thought of shall we invest or not. But right now markets are picking up again and we see investments flowing in, but then of course investments flowing to the sustainable ideas. Ideally the bottom line is that if your business is a sustainable business, if your idea is a sustainable one with a good business model, you can be one among those who can in future try to fall into the category of a good successful startup. Moving on, we have these recognized startups, government recognized startups. So we see around 65,861 startups are recognized startups by the government of India, and out of which they are all these 65,000 plus startups that you see are diversified in around 56 fields or 56 diversified fields. You have startups in IT services, you have in technology, you have in finance, you have in enterprise resource management, you have in AI and ML, you have in nanotechnology, you have in medical, because that's something that is blown out of the place altogether. You have in e-commerce as an area, and that's how brands like Nike and all have come into picture. So all those are some major areas where each of these startups are existing, and they are going way ahead. Just to give you an additional point, back in 2018-19, when asked for predictions in the future, it was once predicted so that India's goal should be that by 2025, we should have 100 unicorns in India. And look at this, 2022, we have 103 unicorns in India. Automatically, now our predictions have changed. And we are now moving on to something like predictions of 2025. How many number of unicorns should the nation have? The figure estimated that one should have, or the nation should be able to get, around 250 unicorns in India. Imagine that's a big number, but the way we are growing, that may not be very far off. Moving on from there, now these startups right now, we say, where are the jobs in the market? These startups are almost spread across 640 districts all over India and almost generate over 7 lakh jobs per year, with an average of almost 11 jobs per startup. That's how you understand the economics behind, in terms how much of a employment generation is there, or how much of districts that are offering to, because that also leads to infrastructural development, or that leads to the district development. And that is how you try to understand. So the Indian startup right now seems to be gaining in from the pandemic, moving forward from there. I'm not very sure if any of this, any of these brands here ring a bell. Can anybody answer maybe in the chat as to what makes these brands so special? Why do we have it on the screen? You could probably respond in the chat. These brands that you see here, what makes them special that we have them here on the screen? All right, I see no responses as such. Well, let me tell you this, that these startups have as such made it very, very special. Somebody said it is marketing. Somebody said it's online. What else? What else makes them special? All right. Started by Indians? Yes, indeed. Okay. Started by Indians. Digital? Yes, they are. What else? Their services, of course. Their services are something that the whole world as such has fallen for. Okay, advertising methods, benefits for us. Recently developed apps, all right. Caters to local market, perfect. Yes. User friendly, yes. Let me tell you, all this that you said, that they are user friendly, they cater to local markets, they are into business, they are into online, they are education, they are e-commerce, and all the good factors that you have tried to bring in, these are all here because they qualify to be the unicorns of India. And all these factors that you've mentioned here, I see exciting loyal customers, innovative marketing, new e-commerce, business, user-friendly, catering to local markets, recently developed, benefits all, has very nice advertising methods. All of those are all a part that build these companies. These companies right now are the unicorns of India. They have shown their success. been in the market, sustained the market pressure, and now moved on to the next one. You have the 2020 unicorns, and then you have these 2021, 22 unicorns that are here. So this is what I'm trying to talk about. What makes them special is these have been invested into becoming the unicorns of India. That makes them special. Ideally, who would think this urban company would have something of that sort? Or Nykaa had something. We've all heard about Nykaa and how nicely they have moved on further. Now, all this, yes, these are the stalwarts, if I could use the word. These are the stalwarts of our startup system right now. But when we move on further, we have some beginners and some beginners who have made small time impact in their own ways. And that is something where I wanted to say. Because see, all the statistics so far that I have been sharing it with you have shown what has been the reaction of existing startups in the market. How did the existing startups reflect to the market or react to the market and then behave? Cost cutting, employee salary deduction, number of employee reduction, or anything like that typically means that these startups have been in the market and then therefore they are trying to survive in the market. But the next thing that we will be discussing about is how these markets or how these pandemic situation, how does when some things go really wrong, how does that make sure that you exist in the market and you exist in the market very strongly? This is opportunity. Please understand this part very well, that when you are in problem, that you are equally given an opportunity also. It's just about how you would want to deal with that problem to convert it into an opportunity. You see again, just some statistics about how many you have seen. $535 billion is what right now is the worth valuation of the unicorns in India. This is a big number as such. So to begin, my third part of my discussion is in terms of as to how do we see that the pandemic takes it forward? How do you have these small time heroes like people like you and me who as such took a decision to stay and to stay afloat with some good, interesting ideas. And these are ideas that have really changed smaller spaces that you would see. To discuss a couple of them is what I would want to discuss and share with you here, because these were situations that were in crisis, and this crisis situation, they used it as opportunities to launch themselves in the market. Most of them, when you read mostly about these founders of these startups, you will understand that most of them said that we were working in the market, or we had a need that we recognized, and therefore we came up with a solution. And the pandemic time was the best time to launch ourselves, because the markets are low, nobody is really into the setting up cost may be a little low because it's vulnerable and everything is digital. So what more do you want? You can sit home and start a business. So the first one, you have something called Green Hives Essential. Now these Green Hives Essential was started in Rourkela, Orissa. They start off with a concept of being eco-friendly and sustainable product with a vision of uplifting sustainable living. So what did they try to do? They tried to sell products like bamboo toothbrushes or copper tongue cleaners or steel straws. I mean, straw that is made, the plastic straw that we use to drink, steel straws, or affordable shopping bags that can be foldable and sustainable, and you can take it for whichever place you would want to. All the products that were pocket friendly that way, in terms of 220 rupees to 250 rupees only in their range of selling. The initial investment was just 60,000, which they had raised as a fund from family and friends. They started off in 2020, and Arjit Mazumdar was one of their mentors who as such helped them to steer their way through. Now, what did they do? Who were the partners? How did they really, come up with bamboo toothbrushes and copper tongue cleaners and all? They tried to come up with local manufacturers. They had a tie-up with them, and they helped them to procure bamboo toothbrushes or straws or shopping bags, and then they ended up into distributing. So they ideally, and how did they do that? They are a B2B or a B2C type of a company. B2B from a corporate perspective, corporate gifting or corporate kits that you would have. B2C in terms that they have their website and their Instagram page through which they try to do most of their revenue generation process and events. They are they come under this say no to plastic and live a sustainable living. Keeping that sort of a thing in mind, this is how they came up with ideas like this. So Green Hives Essential is one such company that started off in around 2020, understanding this part that it is time when the skies are clean that we should come up with something which is more sustainable as a living option. And this was started by people towards Orissa. You have another similar type of a startup, again from Orissa, started around the 2020 August, and I'm sure you must have heard of this name, called the Chef Junction. Now, the Chef Junction was started off by these two small young boys from XLRI Bhubaneswar. They were just out of college, and they realized this fact that people like home cooked food. I mean, if you have ever seen somebody who has ever tried to had food with you, or who is a hostler or somebody who's a non-local, you will always notice that they always crave for the home cooked food. They would try to see that, oh, ghar ka khana hai, and things. So you have such sort of things. And what did they try to do? They aim to make home cooked food available so that it becomes a platform for home chefs to be connected with people who would want home cooked food, thereby leading to a sustainable make living type of a shift arrangement. So you have chef enrollment that they did. They would choose people. I mean, people would drop in their application saying that they want to register with them as a home chef. They would go, taste, do a quality check of every dish that they said that they wanted to do, understand the ingredients that they use, the oil, the masalas that they use, and then finally give an approval, and thereby help them to get a license that is valid up to for 1 year from FSI. And this was a mandate. If you do not have the license, you cannot be a part of the Chef Junction home chef. Investment that they picked up from family and friends was around like 1.5 lakhs only. And now see, look at the first month revenue itself. It was like around 1,200 orders were placed in the very first month. And the revenue model as to how did they want to sustain is around 15 to 20% as margin for every dish that they would go by, which was in addition to the cost that the home chef would try to maintain. Now, this is one way that you see even Hyderabad had one such type of a home chef junction that was there. And of course, this is not something which is directly so, but their competition can be Zomato and Swiggy. Of course, Zomato and Swiggy would go to restaurants. These people go from homes to homes. So it's like, home to home service. That is how they do. And they try to aggregate people just to make sure that people at home stay in living. How did they get this idea? I'm sure all of you will be able to connect with this fact that when the lockdown started, people started experimenting with dishes, and then they tried to put it up on social media. And there was a lot of, I am a good chef type of a thing that came out all on the social media. This idea came up from that place that, when social media enthusiasts started to make dishes and then they shared it on screen, this type of an idea came in from there. Moving on to the next, we had something called Puja Sansar. This came up, this was a startup that started off in 2020 again. It was some startup that came up with things from Patna, Bihar. The idea is that they are the first ever only e-commerce portal in India that aims to bring auspiciousness to your home. And how do they bring auspiciousness? Is that they will try to send you authentic puja items for occasion and for day-to-day use at your doorstep. So it's like I mean, in general, if I can say, it is like the Flipkart of puja samagri. So they had occasions. Now, what occasions that they could do? And because it is Bihar, you have a different set altogether. So you see, you have things like Navratri, Diwali, Karwa Chauth, Chhat Puja, Bhai Dooj, Bhumi Pujan, or any other Hindu festival. You have an authentic kit that is sent across to you. Now, around 4.5 lakh was invested. This was done by a family. The two siblings and the father, they invested around 4.5 lakhs in getting the inventory, and then they started making sure that they make kits accordingly and send it. Now you see, just as an example, you see the beautiful pictures of these kits that they have made, and that's something which is good. They said it is hand-picked, authentic one, which has good quality at a very affordable price. And look at the USP that they have. I mean, they say that they're one-stop shop, and they bridge the gap between the devotees and devotion. They are like the gap, the bridge there. Then they say best quality at a low price, lower than your local market. That ideally meaning that your Padoswala puja shop that is there, we can give you a better quality stuff from them at a much cheaper price. Then in terms that they are easy to return, they said that, okay, if you do not like a product, no problem, you can easily return to us, no questions asked, we will take it back. Just the thing is, it should be within 2 days of delivery. And then they came up with this new factor saying that we have an alliance with God, saying that for every rupee that we will make, 50% will be donated to a trust or an NGO who works for humanity, thereby being that if you spend your money or if you try to book from our website, you will be contributing into somebody else's well-being in general in future. They have a customer service also that you drop in a message on the website, they will get back to you within 24 hours. This startup again was a different need altogether, and that's how they came up with this first ever e-commerce puja shop. And that shows something that, and this whole need, the cause as such started because both these siblings were somewhere in Bangalore. And if you come from a very traditional family, you would want to follow a few rituals and you would want to follow a few days and their importance very nicely. And this was one such family which felt that we were not able to get authentic stuff. We were not able to get authentic puja items where we want to go. We don't get it. And they started having this idea that why don't we collect it? We know what it takes to make, let's say, a Navratri kit, or we know what it takes to get a Chhat Puja kit. So we would make it accordingly and send it to people, and people liked it because in the pandemic, we are all scared of going outside to even get vegetables, leave alone puja items. So this is how they identified a need and they made sure that their need is met in the right manner. We have another side of a story into arty crafts and handicrafts, which is Deep's shop. Now, this is a Jaipur, Rajasthan-based startup. It started off again in 2020 only with an initial investment of only around 5,000 rupees because they wanted to set up a website and a social media platform. Now, the concept here was that you have an e-commerce platform to support the local artisans and in the area of home decor. The idea was home decor and furnishing is the only area where he wanted to support. This was started by Mr. Deepak. And what you would get is very nice, royal looking, elegant, spiritually curated type of products that you would get in return to these, to this. Initially, during the lockdown, before the lockdown started, this used to be his part-time work that he would do. And then during the lockdown, he took it up over as a full-time because the supplier who would supply him before the lockdown as such ran out of business and moved out. And then he took the responsibility that I should be able to get the artisans, the local artisans who were struggling for work during pandemic, I should be able to support them. And that's how he's right now offering products from Rajasthan specifically. And in addition to that, UP, you have people around from artisans from there. And the traffic was that in the very first month or so, they had over 100 orders that were placed. And by November, that is like just within 3-4 months, they had around 500 plus shipments that were done in that very months. And he aimed as such to make sure that it is a 5,000 order company per month by the end of 2021. Ideally, he saw an opportunity to make sure that handicraft, which is meant for home spaces and home decor, can be put up online in an e-commerce perspective to be sold either from Instagram or the website, and which directly deals with somebody who is in the village, who is an artisan himself, helping the first-hand person directly. This is how one such another part in terms of deep shop is something that start up again. Another thing is Felicity. Felicity is one such startup which again comes from a very different perspective altogether in terms of mental health issue. Started off in Rajasthan by the two siblings, and the concept was very clear. They wanted to help people with mental health issues so that they can go to therapy easily without coming out of home. Especially during the pandemic, we've heard a lot of people saying that there are a lot of mental health issues that are increasing among people. And they try to bring in a talk therapy with the users through phone, computers, or video calling and chat. These were some tools that they tried to use. So the model was very simple. You come, you register on their website. They will use their state-of-art technology to make sure that they connect you to a psychologist who can give you the type of counseling session that you require. Now, you see, interestingly, according to their statistics, 50% of, they were expecting urban crowd to come and tell them, I have a very bad life, frustrated life and such things. But interestingly, 50% of their customers come from semi-urban cities or, a little bit of rural tier 2, tier 3 cities, and not the urban type, not the urban cities. Reason being, not many of these psychiatrists and psychologists even exist in the semi-urban places, and therefore geography not being a border, you can sit at home and have a counseling session with somebody from their team. They made sure that they address most of the people who came to the startup came up with ideas or came up with issues related to loneliness, anxiety, stress, depression, and they made sure that they address these issues one by one in a very systematic manner. They would make sure that the counselors who are there are registered with them with proper degree, and their credentials would be checked. The users are given different plans from 1 session to 12 sessions or 36 sessions that is spread across almost 12 weeks. Depending upon the intensity that the users feel, they would be given almost 12-week-long sessions also. So you have price ranges from $999 to $25,000 that a particular person is ready to spend having, at his or her home. And this is again something which is very important. And this sort of a startup and many others that you see in terms of competitors that they have been exploring themselves and are growing drastically in the post-pandemic type of an area and era. Last but not the least, I would want to share about something called Grade Easy. Grade Easy is again a startup that is incubated by an incubator in Gujarat. This startup came up during the lockdown that they gained the ground, especially from a perspective where they saw that schools and colleges have completely converted their education online, but still struggle to conduct examination. So they made sure that they build a platform where they can conduct MCQs and subjective tests both. they made sure that the pricing model is something like pay as you use credit model, where you need to pay just 1 rupee per one student for one exam. So if you, for example, if you have 100 students for one exam, it costs just 100 rupees for the college, nothing more than that. Now, the pain point during their research, they understood why are colleges not going for online examination when they can switch to immediately online education. They understood that they have poor UI UX availability or no vernacular language support, or they think it is too high in cost, or some of them were really very high in cost. So they came up with USPs that can as such help colleges. First thing, in terms that they almost came up with 15 languages, 15 vernacular languages they could really support, something like Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, Tamil, Punjabi, Urdu, German, French, because you have German and French also as a part of foreign language that is taught in some institutions. Also, in terms of mobile responsiveness of the platform, because you understand that students mostly use mobile to function. Unlimited users could be using with there's no upper limit for the users. Voice to text converter. So if you have to ask a question, typically you just have to give a voiceover and it converts into the text. And ML was used to give you individual reports of every student, college by college, in their own format. Now, how do customers, who are the customers who really purchased this product called Grade Easy? You see, you have people of almost 80 institutes who did that. Some of them are very famous, like Xavier's Mumbai or ITI Surat or NIT Surat, and they almost have 25-30,000 plus subject examinations that they have been successful in doing so. Now, you see, all this that we were discussing about, all these couple of 5-6 hour startups that we were discussing about were all started during the pandemic. As I mentioned to you, and to close with this, that these 5-6 startups that I've given you examples, they were all put through pandemic, just as you and I have been. But they used this pandemic situation to make sure that they identify an opportunity where they can fit in very well with their expertise, where customers' need can be answered. And then finally, they could all bring it together into a startup that is sustaining. Of course, you might need to see that your startup direction or course of action, make sure that you're more sustainable and you stay in the market. And all of these, let me tell you, are in bootstrapping stage. That typically means none of them have been funded except for this Grade Easy, which is in with an incubator. Everybody else has independently done so. And that makes sure that you are one among those to understand this part, that when you have a challenging situation, you equally are offered an opportunity to make sure that you turn tables. And that's something which is very important. I would probably want to end this session with this one last quote. This is how it states, that the strongest factor for success is self-esteem. Believing you can do it, believing you deserve it, and if we are able to trust ourselves, if we are able to do it, if we are able to feel that we deserve it, and if we are able to be willing to get it, I am sure there is nothing to stop us from doing so, as some of these startups that I have mentioned during the pandemic have started off. With this, I thank you, Vijay Lakshmi Madam, and the institution to give me an opportunity to come here and share. Over to you, Madam. Open for questions.
Thank you, ma'am. The presentation was very excellent, ma'am. It was very inspiring and motivational. The information what you had given in this presentation is very much useful for the present and future generation, ma'am. Thank you very much. Now I request our colleague, Professor J.V. Rangeshwar Reddy, KGR Institute of Technology and Management to give his vote of thanks. Sir.
Okay, good evening to all. Thank you for everyone who has participated in the important for us, and they gave a very good information for us. It is a motivative information they gave to us, the eminent personalities. And it is my proud privilege to propose from vote of thanks on behalf of the KGR Institute of Technology and Management on my personal behalf. We thank Sir Suresh Adina sir, Vice President for Startups, T-Hub, Telangana State for his presence and valuable information on startups, and he spent valuable time and he gave us valuable time for the spending with us and giving a valuable information. Thank you very much, sir. And we thank Professor Patana Kumar, Professor and Coordinator of EDCell IPG, her presence and valuable message, and she gave the information. Madam, you gave a very greatest information to us and what we are expecting in this particularly these startups. That information will be inspiration to us and the people who are present over here and those who are listening this particular webinar. It is what actually we made this webinar to learn this type of information that we got from you, madam. Very much thank you, madam, for the giving us such a great information to us. And also thank our Honorable Chairman, Dr. K. Govind Reddy Garu, and the respected Director, Professor T.V. Ramana Rao sir, for granting permission to conduct this webinar. And also I thank all the participants from the various institutions and my colleagues and my co-colleagues, as well as the other students who are spent their time to participate and make a grand success of our seminar. Thank you, one and all.
Sir.
Good work, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Suresh sir and Pradhana madam, I'm very much thankful to you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Even Suresh sir's health condition was not well. Sir accepted and he gave his valuable information here.
Madam, for having us here, and it's been an immense pleasure for us. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to come here and be a part of this discussion here. Thank you so much.
We are expecting more and more presentations from you, ma'am, regularly to our institution.
Thank you, madam. Sure. Sure.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Suresh sir.
Yes, madam.
Sir, very much thankful, sir. We are very much thankful to you, sir, for spending your valuable time, sir, in your busy schedule, sir. Even your health was not proper, I think, sir.
I'm at home.
Right. Sir. Thank you.
Madam, I have one submission.
Sir.
If Suresh sir is available, we will have one more session in the near future, like after 1 month or something like that. We will go for one more session with the Suresh sir.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please accept our request, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping my health will be better. I can come there and meet. In person would be a lot better than online.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Whenever you are available.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'll share.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir. You're most welcome, sir.
Have a good evening. Bye. Session is over, right?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, sir. Session is completed, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Suresh, sir.
Thank you, Pradhana. Nice to see you, actually. Last time we didn't see each other, but this time at least.
I'm hoping to see you sometime soon, sometime around September or so.
Yes, I think September, hopefully things will be better. I think both your institutions are nearby, right? Rampalli and IPE are not far from each other. So.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 20 kilometers, sir. 20 kilometers above.
Yeah, but for us to even come to that side itself is 45 kilometers. So after that 20 kilometers doesn't seem like much. So it's okay. All right, we'll plan something in September.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir. Good day.
Okay, sir.
Bye.
Bye, sir. Bye.
Thank you, madam. Thank you again.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Sir.
మీకు అది వాట్సాప్ పంపినది హాలిడేస్ ఎక్స్టెండ్ అయినాక అది చెక్ చేసుకోండి. అది
ఓకే సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
అది చూడండి కరెక్టే, నాది ప్రాపర్ నాది జియో అది.
ఓకే సార్, చూస్తాను.
ఒకసారి చెక్ చేయండి, యూనివర్సిటీలో కనుక్కోండి.
ఓకే సార్.
Right hand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ramanarao, sir. Thank you. మాకు ఛాన్స్ ఇచ్చినందుకు సార్.
No problem.
Congratulations, Vijayalakshmi madam.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations, Vijayalakshmi madam.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. ఓకే సార్.
Ma'am, feedback form.
Vijayalakshmi madam. Vijayalakshmi madam. Vijayalakshmi madam లేదా?
Lakshmi ma'am left, sir. Thank you, one and all, sir.
Okay, we are sending a fill up form and we will send the form to us so that we'll provide a certificate to all of you, those who are present over here. Okay, dear friends, we'll provide a certificate to all participants who are presented over here. Okay, thank you for the making us grand success of this program.
Hello? Hello, participants, please fill back the feedback form which we had posted in the chat box. వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారా? ఉండట్లేదు.
Yes. Email.